If someone's mood can ruin your day, you are not free. If silence makes you anxious, you are not free. If rejection breaks your confidence, you are not free. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it is not cruelty, it is clarity. This audiobook will teach you how to stop reacting, how to stop chasing approval, and how to become so internally grounded that nothing and no one controls you anymore. You will still feel, but you will no longer be owned by your feelings. Listen carefully, apply slowly. Your freedom begins now.
Chapter 1. Accept that no one is coming to save you. Here is the truth that changes everything. No one is coming to save you. Not emotionally, not mentally, not psychologically. This is not a negative statement. It's a liberating one. Most people stay emotionally trapped because they are waiting. Waiting to be understood, waiting to be chosen, waiting to be appreciated, waiting for someone to finally notice their pain and fix it. Waiting keeps you dependent. The moment your peace depends on someone else's behavior, you have lost control. That's the key. Emotional detachment does not begin with becoming cold. It begins with removing false expectations. Because every expectation is a silent demand, and every silent demand becomes a source of resentment. You expect people to care the way you care. You expect fairness. You expect emotional reciprocity. You expect closure. And when those expectations are not met, you suffer. Not because the world is cruel, but because you handed your emotional state to things you cannot control. Waiting for understanding keeps you emotionally dependent. As long as you need someone else to get it before you can move on, you are stuck. As long as you need validation before you feel at peace, you are stuck. Detachment begins the moment you stop expecting rescue, because rescue implies helplessness, and you are not helpless. But here's the uncomfortable part most people avoid. You have been trained to wait. You were taught that someone else will make things right, that love will fix you, that apologies heal everything, that justice brings peace. Sometimes those things happen. Often they don't. And if your inner stability depends on them happening, you will stay emotionally unstable. This is where maturity begins. Mature people stop outsourcing their emotional regulation. They don't deny pain. They don't suppress emotions. They take ownership. Say this clearly in your mind. I am responsible for my inner state. Not my parents, not my partner, not my past, not my trauma. Me. This statement is not about blame. It's about power. Blame keeps you comfortable. Responsibility makes you strong. When you blame, you wait. When you take responsibility, you act. And action is the doorway to detachment. Many people confuse emotional pain with emotional captivity. Pain happens. Captivity is optional. Captivity is staying angry because they never apologized. Captivity is replaying conversations that will never change. Captivity is hoping someone will finally behave differently so you can be okay. That's not healing. That's emotional bargaining. And bargaining keeps you tied to the very thing hurting you. Power grows the moment expectations die. Not all expectations, just the emotional ones that drain you. The expectation that people will be fair, the expectation that effort will always be rewarded, the expectation that being good guarantees good treatment. When you release those expectations, something shifts. You stop being shocked by reality. You stop personalizing behavior. You stop being emotionally pulled into situations you don't need to be in. This is not cynicism, this is clarity. Detached people don't expect life to protect them. They protect themselves. They don't expect people to manage their emotions. They manage their own. They don't wait to feel ready. They decide. You don't need permission to move on. You don't need agreement to heal. You don't need validation to grow. You have a choice. You can continue hoping someone will eventually show up and make things easier, or you can accept reality and become stronger. That acceptance will sting at first because it removes illusions. It removes the fantasy that one conversation, one apology, or one person will finally make everything okay. But once the illusion is gone, strength replaces it, and strength feels calm. Calm comes from knowing this: no matter what happens, you can regulate yourself. No matter who leaves, you can remain stable. No matter who misunderstands you, you can keep moving. This is the birth of emotional independence. Repeat this again, slowly. I am responsible for my inner state. That sentence does not isolate you. It frees you. Because when no one is coming to save you, you stop waiting. And when you stop waiting, you stop giving your power away. You stop asking, why did this happen to me? And you start asking, what do I do now? That question changes everything. It shifts you from victim to participant, from reaction to direction, from attachment to control. This chapter is not about hardening your heart, it's about stabilizing it. Because emotionally detached people don't collapse when life disappoints them. They adapt. And that adaptation starts with one decision: to stop expecting rescue and start leading yourself. Takeaway: the moment you accept that no one is coming to save you, you reclaim your power. Waiting creates dependence. Ownership creates freedom.
Chapter 2. Stop seeking validation. Here is a hard truth you must face if you want emotional freedom. Approval addiction creates emotional slavery. The moment you need someone else's approval to feel okay, you hand them leverage over you. They don't even have to ask for it. You give it away. You seek approval in subtle ways. You over-explain. You justify your choices. You soften your truth. You wait for reactions before you relax. That's not kindness. That's fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of misunderstanding. Fear of being disliked. Fear of standing alone. And fear makes you negotiable. The more you explain yourself, the weaker your position. That's the key. Strong people are clear. Weak people are verbose. When you feel the urge to explain, ask yourself why. Are you sharing for clarity, or are you pleading for acceptance? Because most explanations are not about being understood, they're about being approved. You want people to nod, to agree, to reassure you that you're not wrong for existing the way you do. And that need quietly controls your behavior. You change how you speak. You change how you act. You change how much of yourself you show, all to avoid discomfort. But every time you do that, you shrink. Emotionally detached people don't shrink to fit rooms. They don't audition for acceptance. They don't negotiate their worth. They decide who they are and let others react. You don't need permission to exist. Say it slowly. I don't need permission to exist. Again, I don't need permission to exist. You were never meant to live as a request. Approval seeking is exhausting because it never ends. One person approves, you look for the next. One group accepts you, you fear losing them.
One compliment fades, you need another. It's a moving target. And as long as your self-worth depends on external reactions, you will never feel secure. Because people are inconsistent. Their moods change, their standards shift, their attention moves. If your self-worth moves with them, you will live emotionally unstable. Self-validation removes leverage from others. That's not arrogance, that's grounding. Self-validation means this: you listen to feedback without collapsing. You accept disagreement without self-doubt. You receive criticism without self-erasure. You decide what applies and discard the rest. Detached people don't argue with every opinion. They don't correct every misunderstanding. They don't defend every decision. Because not everything deserves a response, and not everyone deserves access. Here's a pattern you need to break. You feel judged. You feel uncomfortable. You rush to explain. You list reasons. You soften your tone. You add context no one asked for. And afterward, you feel smaller. That's your nervous system telling you the truth. You abandoned yourself. The need to explain is often the need to be spared. Spared from rejection, spared from disapproval, spared from misunderstanding. But misunderstanding is not a threat. It's part of life. When you accept that not everyone will agree with you, you stop performing. When you stop performing, you become calm. Calm is power. This does not mean you become rude. It means you become firm. You say less. You stand straighter. You let silence do the work. Silence makes insecure people uncomfortable. Confidence does not rush. You don't need to convince people of your value. If they don't see it, that's information, not an emergency. Approval addiction trains you to chase reactions, likes, praise, validation, reassurance. Detachment trains you to chase alignment. Am I acting from fear or clarity? Am I betraying myself to be accepted? Those questions matter more than applause. Say it again. I don't need permission to exist. You don't need approval to say no. You don't need consensus to walk away. You don't need agreement to choose differently. When you stop seeking validation, something powerful happens. People either respect you or remove themselves. Both outcomes are wins. Because the people who only liked you, the version of you that needed approval, were never aligned with the real you. Detachment is not about being liked less. It's about being controlled less. The less you seek approval, the less manipulable you become. No one can threaten to withdraw what you don't need. That's the leverage shift. And once you experience that shift, you feel lighter. You speak cleaner. You move faster. You second-guess less. You stop living as a question mark. This chapter is about reclaiming your center. Because the moment you stop asking, "Is this okay?" you start asking, "Is this true to me?" That is emotional adulthood. Takeaway. Approval addiction keeps you emotionally dependent. Self-validation sets you free. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop negotiating your worth.
Chapter 3. Understand that most people project. Learn this truth. It will save you years of unnecessary emotional pain. Most people are not reacting to you. They are reacting from themselves. Their fears, their insecurities, their unresolved wounds, their unmet expectations. People react from their wounds, not from truth. That's the key. Once you truly understand this, you stop taking things personally. And when you stop taking things personally, you stop bleeding emotionally. Most emotional reactions are not objective observations. They are emotional leaks. Someone snaps at you. Someone dismisses you.
someone insults you, someone misunderstands you. Your first instinct is to internalize it. What did I do wrong? Why are they treating me this way? What does this say about me? That instinct is trained, not natural, because projection is everywhere. People offload their internal chaos onto external targets. Angry people find reasons to be angry. Insecure people find flaws. Unhealed people create conflict, and emotionally detached people understand this. They interpret before they react. Insults reveal the speaker, not the target. Say that again in your mind. This is about them, not me. Again, this is about them, not me. That sentence is not a denial, it's discernment. It does not mean you ignore all feedback, it means you filter it. Detached people do not absorb every emotional outburst as truth. They ask one question: is this information or is this projection? Because projection sounds emotional, it's exaggerated, charged, personal. Truth is usually calm, clear, specific. When someone attacks your character instead of addressing behavior, that's projection. When someone makes assumptions instead of asking questions, that's projection. When someone reacts intensely to something small, that's projection. And reacting emotionally to projection is how you get trapped. Detachment grows through interpretation, not reaction. Reaction is automatic. Interpretation is intentional. Reaction says, I must respond. Interpretation says, let me understand first. This pause changes everything, because once you interpret correctly, the emotional charge disappears. You stop defending yourself, you stop explaining, you stop arguing with emotions. You see what's really happening. A wounded person is speaking. That doesn't make their behavior acceptable, it makes it understandable, and understanding is power. Most people never learn this. They spend their lives emotionally reacting to emotionally reactive people. That's chaos. Detached people step out of that loop. They don't mirror energy. They don't escalate. They don't personalize emotional noise. They stay grounded. You don't have to absorb someone's pain just because they hand it to you. You don't have to carry someone's insecurity just because they project it onto you. You don't have to prove your worth to someone who is uncomfortable with themselves. Say it again. This is about them, not me. This mindset removes emotional hooks. You stop replaying conversations. You stop obsessing over tone. You stop needing to correct narratives. Because once you see projection, you can't unsee it. You realize how often people speak from fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of losing control, fear of being exposed, fear of being left behind, and fear always looks for an outlet. If you are emotionally available, it will choose you. That's why boundaries matter, not physical ones, emotional ones. You don't need to react to everything directed at you. Reaction gives projection fuel. Silence starves it. Calm disarms it. Non-reactivity ends it. This is not about being passive, it's about being selective. Detached people choose where their energy goes. They don't chase every misunderstanding. They don't fight every accusation. They don't internalize every emotional wave. They ask, is this mine to carry? Most of the time, the answer is no. This chapter is about shifting your lens. Instead of asking, why are they doing this to me, you ask, what is happening inside them? That shift removes ego from the equation, and when ego steps aside, peace steps in. You stop being emotionally reactive. You start being emotionally intelligent. That's the transition. And once you master this, you are ready for the next level of detachment. Because even when you understand projection, you must still control the one thing that decides everything, your response. That's where we go next. Takeaway. Most reactions are projections. Most insults are confessions. When you interpret instead of react, you reclaim control. Chapter 4. Control your response, not the outcome. Here's the rule that governs emotional freedom. You cannot control results. You can only control your response. Everything else is an illusion. You don't control how people interpret you. You don't control how they feel. You don't control whether they agree, stay, change, or leave. Trying to control outcomes is how people exhaust themselves emotionally. They rehearse conversations, they imagine reactions, they obsess over what if, and none of it gives them peace. Because peace doesn't come from certainty, it comes from self-command. Emotional mastery lives in the pause. That's the key. Between what happens and what you do next, there is a moment. That moment is where power lives. Most people don't use it. They react instantly. They speak from emotion. They defend, attack, explain, or withdraw. Reaction feels natural, but reaction is automatic, and anything automatic can be manipulated. Detached people slow things down. They pause, not because they are unsure, but because they are deliberate. Say it clearly. I respond, I don't react. Again, I respond, I don't react. Response is chosen. Reaction is reflex. When you respond, you remain in control. When you react, control is gone. This is why calm is a position of power. Calm is not weakness. Calm is containment. It signals self-trust. When you stay calm, you don't hand your nervous system to the moment. You don't let someone else's chaos decide your behavior. That's emotional leadership. Most conflicts escalate not because of the issue, but because of reactions. Tone meets tone, ego meets ego, emotion meets emotion. Detached people refuse to mirror chaos. They don't rush to fix. They don't rush to explain. They don't rush to win. They observe. They let the moment settle. They understand something most people miss. Outcomes reveal themselves. Responses shape who you become. If you chase outcomes, you lose yourself. If you control responses, you build yourself. This chapter is about discipline, not emotional suppression, emotional regulation. Suppression buries feelings. Regulation guides them. When anger rises, you notice it. When fear appears, you acknowledge it. When anxiety tightens your chest, you pause. You don't let it drive. Because feelings are signals, not instructions. And signals are meant to be read, not obeyed blindly. The pause is where clarity enters. Sometimes the pause lasts seconds, sometimes hours, sometimes days. Detached people are comfortable not responding immediately. Urgency is often emotional manipulation. If someone demands a reaction, they are trying to control the frame. You don't have to comply. You don't owe immediate responses. You don't owe emotional availability. You don't owe explanations on demand. Silence, used intentionally, is strength. This doesn't mean avoidance. It means timing. Right action at the wrong time is still wrong. Calm people choose timing. They don't say things just to release tension. They speak when it adds value. And sometimes they don't speak at all. Because not every situation requires engagement. That's maturity. You will notice something interesting as you practice this. People start reacting to your calm. They fill the silence. They expose themselves. They escalate or de-escalate. And either way, you stay steady. That steadiness changes dynamics. You are no longer emotionally pulled. You are emotionally centered. Say it again. I respond. I don't react. This is a practice. You won't master it overnight. But every time you pause instead of reacting, you weaken old patterns. Every time you choose calm over impulse, you strengthen self-command. And self-command is the core of detachment. This chapter completes an internal shift. You stop trying to control outcomes. You start controlling yourself. And once you master this, you will notice something powerful. Other people's opinions lose their grip. Because when you control your response, you no longer need their approval. That's where we go next. Takeaway. You can't control outcomes, but you can control responses. And that calm in between is your power.
Chapter 5. Detach from people's opinions. Here's a reality you must accept if you want emotional freedom. Opinions change. Principles don't. Most people build their confidence on unstable ground. They feel good when they're praised. They feel small when they're criticized. They rise and fall with other people's opinions. That is emotional dependence. If someone's opinion can elevate you or destroy you, they control you. Detached people understand this early. Being liked is fragile. Being respected is solid. Respect matters more than being liked, because people can like you today and dismiss you tomorrow. People can praise you in public and undermine you in private. Opinions are influenced by mood, insecurity, bias, and fear. They are not reliable foundations for self-worth. Say it slowly. Their opinion does not define me. Again, their opinion does not define me. This sentence does not make you arrogant. It makes you stable. Detachment from opinions does not mean ignoring all feedback. It means discerning what deserves weight. Feedback from people you respect, who live with integrity, can be useful. Noise from people projecting their insecurity can be discarded. Detached people do not collect opinions. They collect data, and then they decide. They don't rush to correct misunderstandings. They don't defend every rumor. They don't chase approval, because chasing approval keeps you busy, not free. One of the strongest habits you must break is the need to explain yourself to opinions. When someone judges you without context, your instinct is to fill in the gaps. But explanations don't create respect. Consistency does. You don't convince people with words. You convince them with behavior. And even then, some people will still judge. That's unavoidable. This is where silence becomes power. Silence is often the strongest response, not because you are afraid, but because you are grounded. Silence says, I don't need to prove myself to you. Silence removes fuel. People who live on opinions want reactions. They want emotional engagement. When you don't give it, they lose influence. Detached people choose carefully where they invest energy. They don't argue with strangers. They don't wrestle with comments. They don't personalize criticism from people who don't know them. They know something most people forget. You cannot control perception. You can only control alignment. Are your actions aligned with your values? Are you acting from integrity or fear? Are you compromising yourself to be liked? Those questions matter more than opinions, because when you live from principle, opinions become background noise. Some will approve, some will disapprove. Neither determines your worth. Say it again. Their opinion does not define me. This chapter is about emotional independence. When you detach from opinions, you stop living as a reflection. You become a source. You speak when it matters. You stay silent when it doesn't. You don't chase validation. You don't fear criticism. You remain centered. And when you remain centered, you become difficult to manipulate, because manipulation requires insecurity. No one can use approval against you if you don't need it. No one can threaten rejection if you are comfortable standing alone. That comfort is strength, and strength changes how people treat you. They may not always like you,
but they will feel your solidity. And that solidity prepares you for the next level of detachment. Because once opinions lose power, you must confront a deeper attachment, attaching your identity to other people. That's where we go next. Takeaway. Opinions shift. Principles anchor. When you stop living for approval, you reclaim control.
Chapter 6. Stop attaching your identity to others. Here's a truth most people never confront. When you attach your identity to someone else, you give them power over your emotional stability. That is not love. That is dependence. Relationships are meant to complement you, not complete you. The moment someone becomes your emotional anchor, you become unstable, because anchors can be pulled away. Attachment creates fear of loss. That's the key. When your sense of self depends on another person, their presence, their attention, their approval, you start living in fear. Fear of losing them, fear of disappointing them, fear of being replaced. And fear changes how you behave. You tolerate what you shouldn't. You shrink your needs. You silence your truth. Not because you want to, but because you're afraid of losing who you think you are without them. This is where emotional suffering begins. Many people say, "I can't imagine my life without them." That sentence sounds romantic. It isn't. It's a warning. Because if you can't imagine yourself without someone, you've merged your identity with theirs, and merged identities break easily. Detached people don't disappear into relationships. They remain themselves. They don't abandon their values to keep connection. They don't lose their direction to maintain closeness. They understand this. Love should add to your life, not replace your foundation. Say it slowly. I am whole on my own. Again, I am whole on my own. This is not isolation. This is self-respect. When you are whole, you choose relationships freely. When you are incomplete, you cling. Clinging creates imbalance. One person becomes the emotional provider, the other becomes the emotional dependent, and dependence always creates anxiety. You start monitoring behavior, reading tone, overanalyzing silence. You feel unsettled when they pull away, even slightly. That's not intuition. That's attachment insecurity. Independence stabilizes emotions because when you are emotionally independent, loss does not destroy you. It hurts, but it doesn't dismantle you. You don't beg people to stay. You don't threaten to be loved. You don't negotiate your worth. You know who you are without anyone else. That knowledge changes everything. Detached people don't fear being alone. They fear losing themselves. And because of that, they don't tolerate dynamics that erase them. This chapter is not telling you to avoid closeness. It's telling you to avoid fusion. Fusion says, I am you. Detachment says, I am me with you. There is strength in separation, not emotional distance, identity distance. You can care deeply without making someone your emotional home. Your emotional home must be internal. That's maturity. This is where many people resist because they confuse attachment with connection. Attachment says, I need you to feel okay. Connection says, I choose you from a place of fullness. Only one of those is stable. When you are whole on your own, you stop fearing abandonment. And when fear disappears, you become calm. Calm people don't chase. They don't cling. They don't panic. They allow people to stay or leave. And that allowance creates respect because people feel when you don't need them. And paradoxically, that often makes them want you more. But that is not the goal. The goal is freedom. Freedom from emotional dependency. Freedom from fear-based behavior. Freedom from losing yourself in relationships. Say it again. I am whole on my own. This sentence is a boundary. It tells your nervous system you are safe. It tells your mind you are stable. It tells others you are not desperate. And desperation is what destroys relationships.
When you stop attaching your identity to others, you regain emotional balance. You show up present, not needy, engaged, not anxious, connected, not consumed. That balance is detachment in action. And once you are no longer defined by others, you are ready for the next challenge, being misunderstood and not trying to fix it. That's where we go next. Takeaway. Attachment creates fear. Independence creates stability. When you stop attaching your identity to others, you stop living in emotional risk.
Chapter 7. Learn to be comfortable with being misunderstood. You need to accept this truth that unsettles most people. You will be misunderstood. Not once, not occasionally, but repeatedly. And if you require understanding to feel at peace, you will never be at peace. Misunderstanding is not injustice. That's the key. Most people treat misunderstanding as an emergency. They rush to explain. They defend their intentions. They clarify, justify, and overcorrect. But explanation is often an emotional trap, because the need to explain is usually not about clarity. It's about discomfort. Discomfort with being misperceived, discomfort with not being seen correctly, discomfort with losing control of the narrative. Detached people release that need. They understand something important. You cannot control how people interpret you. Interpretation is filtered through bias, experience, emotion, and insecurity. Even when you speak clearly, people hear selectively. Even when you act with integrity, people assume motives. Trying to manage perception is exhausting and unnecessary. Say it slowly. I don't need to be understood to be at peace. Again, I don't need to be understood to be at peace. This sentence removes pressure, because once you stop needing understanding, you stop performing, you stop editing yourself, you stop chasing clarity that may never come. You accept that narratives will exist without your approval. Detachment means letting narratives exist without correcting them. That doesn't mean you lie. It means you choose your battles. Not every misunderstanding deserves clarification. Not every false assumption deserves correction. Sometimes silence is the most accurate response. People who are committed to misunderstanding you will do so regardless of explanation. And people who care to understand will ask questions. Detached people don't argue with assumptions. They let time and consistency speak. Because truth doesn't need urgency. Urgency is usually ego. The urge to explain often comes from fear. Fear of being judged, fear of being disliked, fear of losing connection. But connection built on constant explanation is fragile. Strong connection allows room for misunderstanding. This chapter is about tolerance, not tolerance of disrespect, tolerance of ambiguity. You allow people to think what they want without letting it disturb your inner state. That's power. Most emotional suffering comes from fighting imagined judgments, conversations replayed in your head, arguments you never get to finish, clarifications no one asked for. Detached people don't live in imagined courtrooms. They live in the present. They know who they are. And when you know who you are, misunderstanding loses its sting. Say it again. I don't need to be understood to be at peace. This doesn't make you invisible. It makes you grounded. You speak when it matters. You clarify when there is mutual respect. You remain silent when it's about ego. That discernment protects your energy. Energy is finite. Detached people guard it. They don't waste it trying to manage opinions. They don't waste it correcting every narrative. They don't waste it defending themselves unnecessarily. Because peace is not found in agreement. Peace is found in self-trust. When you trust yourself, you don't panic when misunderstood. You allow others to be wrong about you, and that freedom is rare.
Once you master this, you are no longer controlled by perception. And when perception loses power, emotions become easier to manage. Which leads us to the next chapter, understanding emotions without being commanded by them. Takeaway: misunderstanding is not injustice. Explanation is often a trap. When you stop needing to be understood, you protect your peace. Chapter 8. Emotions are signals, not commands. This is a truth that changes how you experience yourself. Emotions are signals, not commands. They inform you, they alert you, they point to something, but they are not instructions. Most people don't know this. They feel, then act. They feel, then speak. They feel, then decide. And that pattern keeps them emotionally weak. Feelings rise, peak, and fall. That's the nature of emotion. They are temporary states, not permanent truths. But when you treat emotions like orders, you give them authority. Anger tells you to attack. Fear tells you to retreat. Sadness tells you to stop. Anxiety tells you to overthink. And if you obey every emotion, you live reactively. Acting on every emotion weakens discipline. That's the key. Discipline is not about suppressing feelings, it's about not being ruled by them. Detached people feel deeply, but act selectively. They don't deny emotion, they observe it. Say it clearly: I observe my emotions. Again, I observe my emotions. Observation creates space, and space breaks control. The moment you observe an emotion, you are no longer inside it. You step back. You notice the sensation, the tension, the heat, the story forming in your mind. And instead of reacting, you watch. This is not passive, it's powerful, because awareness dissolves emotional dominance. An emotion that is seen clearly loses intensity. It doesn't disappear immediately, but it stops escalating. Most emotional damage happens when emotions go unobserved. You think, I am angry, instead of, anger is present. That difference matters. One fuses emotion with identity. The other separates them. Detached people do not say, I am anxious. They say anxiety is passing through. They don't say, I am hurt. They say pain is present right now. That language keeps power where it belongs. Because emotions are weather, not the sky. They pass. But if you act while inside them, you create consequences that last longer than the feeling. That's where regret comes from. Not from feeling, but from reacting. This chapter is about restraint, not suppression, not avoidance. Restraint. You feel the urge to respond, and you pause. You feel the impulse to defend, and you breathe. You feel the pressure to decide, and you wait. That waiting is not weakness, it's intelligence. Emotion wants immediacy. Wisdom wants timing. Detached people give emotions time to peak and fall. They don't make permanent decisions in temporary states. They don't send messages from anger. They don't commit from fear. They quit from frustration. They wait. And in that waiting, clarity returns. Say it again: I observe my emotions. Observation turns chaos into information. You start to notice patterns, what triggers you, what drains you, what unsettles you. Not to judge, but to understand. And understanding gives you options. When you stop being controlled by emotion, you gain choice. Choice is freedom. You can feel anger without acting aggressively. You can feel sadness without collapsing. You can feel fear without retreating. That is emotional maturity. Most people never learn this. They think emotions are dangerous or sacred. They're neither. They're data. and data must be interpreted, not obeyed. This chapter completes an internal hierarchy. You are above your emotions, not disconnected from them, but not beneath them. That position stabilizes you, and once you are no longer dominated by emotion, you are ready for the next challenge, releasing attachment to outcomes altogether. That's where true detachment is finalized. Takeaway: emotions rise and fall. You don't have to move with them. When you observe instead of obey, you regain control.
Chapter 9. Remove yourself from emotional chaos. Not every battle deserves your attention. Most battles don't. Here's a truth most people never learn. Chaos is not accidental. It is generated, and it feeds on participation. Emotional chaos survives because people engage with it. They explain, they argue, they defend, they react, and every reaction is fuel. If you are constantly exhausted, overwhelmed, or emotionally drained, look closely at your environment, not your workload, not your schedule, your emotional environment. Who has access to your reactions? Who benefits when you are unsettled? Who pulls you into conversations that go nowhere? Maturity is realizing that peace is not found by winning arguments. Peace is found by refusing unnecessary wars. Some conflicts are not meant to be resolved. They are meant to be exited. Distance is a form of self-respect. This is not weakness. This is intelligence. When you stay close to emotional chaos, you pay a price. Your focus scatters. Your clarity dissolves. Your nervous system stays on high alert. You become reactive instead of intentional. And reactive people are easy to control. Chaos hijacks your attention, and attention is power. Every moment you spend entangled in drama is a moment stolen from your growth. Your discipline weakens, your goals blur, your emotional baseline drops. High-level people understand this early. They do not chase peace, they protect it. They choose environments carefully. They choose conversations selectively. They choose battles deliberately. You do not owe everyone access to your energy. You do not owe everyone an explanation. You do not owe everyone emotional availability. Some people are addicted to intensity. They don't want resolution. They want reaction. They provoke. They escalate. They bait. And if you take the bait, you lose leverage. This is where most people get it wrong. They think walking away means losing. They think silence means weakness. They think disengagement means avoidance. It doesn't. Walking away is strength. It is self-command. Avoidance is running from responsibility. Walking away is refusing manipulation. Avoidance is fear-based. Walking away is value-based. You walk away not because you are afraid to confront. You walk away because you are disciplined enough to choose peace over ego. Repeat this slowly and mean it. I choose peace over drama. Pause. Let the words settle. This is not a passive statement. It is a decision, a boundary, a standard. Drama thrives where boundaries are weak. Chaos grows where standards are unclear. When you stop reacting, something interesting happens. The chaos reveals itself. The instigator loses interest. The power dynamic shifts. People who rely on emotional volatility cannot function around calm. They feel exposed. They feel powerless. They move on. Calm is disruptive to chaos. This chapter is not telling you to become detached from life. It is teaching you to detach from noise. There is a difference. You can be engaged without being entangled.
You can care without carrying. You can observe without absorbing. That is emotional sovereignty. Ask yourself this question honestly. How much of my emotional stress is self-inflicted through engagement? You will be surprised by the answer. Every argument you didn't need to win, every message you didn't need to reply to, every explanation you didn't owe. Those moments add up, and they quietly shape your emotional stability. The strongest people you know are not the loudest. They are the most selective. They don't attend every fight they're invited to. They don't respond to every provocation. They don't clarify every misunderstanding. They understand a powerful truth. Silence ends chaos faster than confrontation. This does not mean suppressing your emotions. It means managing access to them. You are allowed to leave rooms that drain you. You are allowed to disengage from people who thrive on disorder. You are allowed to protect your nervous system. Peace is not something you earn. It is something you enforce, and enforcement requires discomfort. People will notice the change. They may push harder. They may accuse you of being distant, cold, or uncaring. Let them. That reaction is proof that your boundaries are working. Emotional chaos hates limits. It survives on endless engagement. When you step back, you reclaim authority over your inner world, and once you control your inner world, the outer world loses its grip. This chapter is a turning point, because once you stop feeding chaos, you begin to notice something deeper. You begin to see your emotions more clearly, without distortion, without noise. You begin to see which feelings are signals and which are just echoes of other people's instability. And that leads us to the next step in mastery. Takeaway. When you remove yourself from emotional chaos, you create space for awareness, and awareness is where true emotional control begins. Chapter 10. Build an internal standard. If you don't live by your own rules, you will always live by someone else's reactions. This is where real emotional stability is built, not in motivation, not in affirmation, but in standards. An internal standard is a personal code. It defines how you behave when no one is watching, how you respond when you're triggered, how you move when approval is absent. Without an internal standard, you drift. You adjust yourself to fit rooms. You shape-shift to keep peace. You negotiate your values to avoid discomfort. And that is how people lose themselves. External feedback becomes irrelevant when inner rules are clear, not ignored, irrelevant. When you know what you stand for, praise doesn't inflate you. Criticism doesn't collapse you. You stop outsourcing your self-worth. Most emotional instability comes from one root problem. People don't know what they stand for, so they ask. They check reactions. They wait for signals. They become emotionally needy without realizing it. Not needy for love, needy for confirmation. An internal standard ends that cycle. Self-respect replaces emotional neediness. Self-respect is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand validation. It simply acts in alignment. You don't argue with people when your standards are solid. You don't over-explain. You don't chase understanding. You adjust your proximity. You enforce boundaries. You move on. This is not arrogance. This is self-trust. Repeat this slowly. I live by my standards. Pause. Say it again, not as a slogan, but as a commitment. Living by your standards means some days you will disappoint people. It means you will say no when yes would be easier. It means you will walk away from situations that once consumed you. And that discomfort is the price of stability. People without standards live emotionally reactive lives. They feel good when praised. They spiral when criticized. They feel confident one day and insecure the next. Why? Because their identity depends on feedback. When you build an internal standard, consistency replaces chaos. You stop asking, "How do I feel today?" and start asking, "What does my standard require?" That question alone will change your life. Your emotions stop leading, your principles take over. This does not make you emotionless, it makes you grounded. You still feel anger, you still feel fear, you still feel doubt, but those emotions no longer dictate your behavior. They inform, they do not command. This is the difference between maturity and impulse. Standards create predictability, not for others, but for you. You know how you'll respond under pressure. You know what you tolerate and what you don't. You know when to engage and when to disengage. That clarity calms the nervous system. Your mind stops spinning because decisions are already made. Most people exhaust themselves deciding the same things over and over again, whether to reply, whether to explain, whether to stay. Standards eliminate decision fatigue. You don't decide in the moment, you execute what you've already decided. This is why consistency creates emotional stability. Inconsistency breeds anxiety. Predictability breeds peace. You don't need to announce your standards, you demonstrate them. People learn how to treat you by what you allow, not what you say. And here's a hard truth. If someone repeatedly violates your peace and you stay, you've set a standard, just not a healthy one. Your life reflects your standards, not your intentions. Building an internal standard requires honesty. You must stop pretending certain behaviors don't affect you. You must stop tolerating what drains you. You must stop negotiating with your own limits. This is where many people quit, because self-respect requires confrontation, not with others, but with yourself. You must ask, what kind of person am I committed to being, even when it costs me comfort? That answer becomes your anchor. From there, emotional stability stops being a struggle. It becomes a byproduct. You stop chasing calm. Calm emerges naturally. You stop defending yourself. Your behavior speaks. You stop seeking approval. Your standards approve first. This is inner authority. And once you have inner authority, something powerful happens. You become less reactive, less entangled, less emotionally dependent. You start noticing your emotions instead of being ruled by them. Which leads us to the next step. Takeaway. When your standards are internal, your emotions stabilize naturally. Because you are no longer led by feelings, you are guided by principles.
Chapter 11. Stop replaying the past. Most people live in two worlds at once. The present passes them by, the past controls their mind. Rumination feeds emotional attachment. It keeps wounds open. It magnifies mistakes. It reinforces what you cannot change. Every replay of the past is a choice. Every thought that drifts backward gives your power away. And the more you repeat it, the stronger the attachment becomes. Here's the truth. The past has no authority in the present. Mistakes, betrayals, losses, regrets, they belong behind you. They do not dictate your actions today. They do not define your value. They do not control your responses. Yet most people act as if they do. They apologize endlessly for things already over. They relive conversations that cannot be changed. They obsess over outcomes long gone. This is the trap of rumination. It is disguised as reflection, but reflection informs. Rumination enslaves. Detached people understand the difference. They notice the memory, they acknowledge it, they learn, and then they release. Repeat slowly, with intent.
I release what no longer exists. Say it again. Let it sink. Let it take residence in your mind. The past is a teacher, not a jailer. You cannot rewrite it. You cannot demand an apology from it. You cannot change what has been said or done. Your control begins here, in the present. Mental discipline is required. Detachment is not emotional suppression. It is active mastery. It is choosing not to let yesterday dictate today. Every time your mind drifts backward, observe it. Notice the story playing. Notice the emotion resurfacing, and consciously decide to release it. This is hard at first. The mind will resist. It will whisper that thinking it over is necessary. It will insist that closure comes from reliving it. That is false. Closure does not come from repetition. Closure comes from acceptance. Acceptance comes from decision. You decide that what happened cannot control you. You decide that your emotional state today matters more than the story in your head. You decide to act from reality, not memory. Detach from your past mistakes. Detach from old grievances. Detach from relationships that ended long ago. Detach from shame, guilt, and regret. Every release strengthens you. Every time you stop replaying the past, you reclaim the energy once tied to memory. Energy that can now fuel focus, clarity, and intentional action. Energy that builds the foundation of emotional independence. Remember, detachment requires mental discipline. Discipline over thoughts is discipline over life. You cannot be free if your mind is chained to memory. You are not your past. You are the sum of choices you make in the present. When you master this, you will notice something powerful. You respond to life rather than react to old wounds. You engage with people and situations clearly, not through the filter of memory. You act with authority, not with defensiveness. The past becomes a tool, not a master. Your mind becomes a resource, not a battlefield. Repeat once more. I release what no longer exists. This statement is a boundary, a commitment, a reclaiming of your emotional power. And once this boundary is in place, you are ready for the next level of detachment, observing and directing your energy rather than scattering it on distractions and unnecessary attachments. Takeaway. Rumination enslaves. The past has no authority. When you release what no longer exists, you reclaim mental clarity, emotional power, and the freedom to act decisively. Chapter 12. Master Solitude. Here is a principle most people resist. Being alone does not mean being weak. It does not mean being abandoned. It does not mean something is wrong with you. Solitude strengthens emotional independence. It teaches you to rely on your own presence, your own judgment, and your own inner authority. Most people confuse solitude with loneliness. They fill their time with noise, scrolling, talking, and social approval. They fear silence. They fear themselves. But loneliness fades when self-connection deepens. The more you know yourself, the more you trust yourself, the less the absence of others matters. Repeat slowly and deliberately, I am safe alone. Say it again. Let the words settle. Let them sink into your nervous system. Detached people enjoy solitude, not out of arrogance, not out of fear of others, out of freedom. Freedom from dependency, freedom from manipulation, freedom from approval seeking. When you are comfortable alone, you are less likely to compromise your values. You are less likely to bend to emotional pressure. You are less likely to tolerate chaos just for company. Solitude allows reflection. It allows clarity. It allows the mind to reset. It allows the heart to feel without distraction. Many people avoid solitude because they are uncomfortable with the truth of their own minds. They avoid it because emotions arise that they have never processed. They avoid it because they have not learned to sit quietly with themselves. But mastering solitude is learning to be fully present with yourself, to observe your thoughts without judgment, to sit with your feelings without reacting, to enjoy your own company without fear. Those who enjoy solitude cannot be manipulated. You cannot be baited when your attention is grounded. You cannot be unsettled when your center is within. You cannot be controlled when your power lives in your self-connection. Repeat again, I am safe alone. This chapter is a training ground for independence. It is where you practice self-sufficiency. It is where you develop resilience. True solitude is not isolation. It is connection, just the most important connection of all, connection with yourself. Once you master this, you carry calm wherever you go. You do not require validation. You do not require constant interaction. You do not require permission to exist fully. And when solitude becomes comfortable, you begin to notice how much energy you were wasting on people, situations, and reactions that never deserved it. Energy becomes yours again. Focus sharpens. Decisions become intentional. Mastering solitude is not a one-time achievement. It is a practice, a daily choice to prioritize inner peace over constant distraction. The benefits are profound. Your mind becomes quieter. Your emotions become steadier. Your life becomes less reactive. Your boundaries become unshakable. This chapter lays the groundwork for the final steps of detachment, balancing engagement with the world while keeping your inner sanctuary intact. Takeaway: solitude is strength. Loneliness is optional. When you are safe alone, you protect your energy, your clarity, and your emotional independence. Chapter 13. Become unreactable. Here is the ultimate skill in emotional mastery: becoming unreactable. Most people give their power away without realizing it. A comment triggers them. A tone enrages them. A criticism unsettles them. And every reaction feeds someone else's control. Calm disarms provocation. It is a power most people underestimate. When you respond with neutrality instead of anger, you shift the energy in the room. You shift the perception of yourself. You shift control away from chaos. Being unreactable does not mean you're emotionless. It does not mean you suppress, ignore, or deny your feelings. It means you observe first. You choose when and how to respond, and often you choose not to respond at all. Repeat slowly. Nothing here requires my reaction. Say it again. Let it settle in your body. Let it anchor your presence. Emotional neutrality confuses manipulators. They rely on reactions. They thrive on provocation. They feed on impulsivity. When you refuse to react, their tactics fail. Their power over you evaporates. Detachment is not passive. It is a deliberate stance, a refusal to be baited, a command over your own inner state. Unreactive people control the room. They are calm in conflict, steady in chaos, measured in emotion. The moment you stop reacting to provocation, you stop giving people free leverage. You stop feeding chaos with your energy. You reclaim authority. This is where transformation becomes visible. Others notice. Some may push harder. Some may try new strategies. It doesn't matter. Your control is internal. Your power does not depend on their behavior. Being unreactable is not about avoidance. It is about sovereignty. It is about choosing which battles deserve your energy and which do not. Practice this daily. Notice triggers, but do not surrender to them. Pause. Breathe. Observe. Choose your action with intention. Every reaction avoided builds emotional muscle. Every pause strengthens your presence. Every act of neutrality reinforces your internal authority. Over time, people will test you less. Situations that once derailed you will barely ripple your calm. You become immovable, not rigid, flexible, yet centered. Repeat once more. Nothing here requires my reaction. This phrase is your shield, your anchor, your constant reminder that your inner state is yours alone. When you master unreactability, you stop being a participant in other people's chaos. You begin to move through life on your own terms. You control your energy, your attention, and your responses. That control is the final layer of detachment. Once it is mastered, no one can pull you into emotional turbulence. No external circumstance can hijack your peace. You stand fully grounded, fully present, fully sovereign. Takeaway. Calm is power. Reaction is surrender. When you refuse to be baited, you reclaim authority over your inner world.
Chapter 14. Detach, but remain kind. Here is a truth most people miss. Detachment does not mean coldness. Detachment does not mean bitterness. It does not mean shutting down or avoiding care. Detachment is clarity. Detachment is balance. Detachment is freedom. Most people confuse detachment with indifference. They think if they're let go, they must stop caring. If they enforce boundaries, they must build walls. If they protect their energy, they must become harsh. That is false. Detachment is presence without dependency. It is engagement without surrender. It is love without losing yourself. Compassion without attachment is power. You can feel deeply, you can help, you can care, and still remain fully anchored in your own stability. Repeat slowly, I care without losing myself. Say it again. Let the words settle. Feel the strength that comes from being fully present without being pulled off balance. Emotional balance beats emotional suppression. Suppressing feelings is weakness. It is avoidance. It is pretending you do not feel. Balance is mastery. It is acknowledging your emotions, but not letting them dictate your actions. It is acknowledging others' needs, but not sacrificing your boundaries to meet them. Kindness is not optional for detachment. It is a tool, a weapon, and a reflection of strength. Think of the detached person you admire most. They are calm, they are clear, they are consistent, and yet people are drawn to them, not because they are distant, but because their presence is safe, measured, and strong. Detachment without kindness becomes cold and brittle. It becomes isolation. It becomes judgment. Kindness without detachment becomes chaos. It becomes manipulation. It becomes dependency. True detachment is a balance between these two extremes. It is firmness with compassion. It is boundaries with generosity. It is strength with softness. When you care without losing yourself, you model how to interact with integrity. You respond, not react. You help, not enable. You love, not cling. This is where freedom meets connection, where inner sovereignty meets emotional intelligence, where self-respect meets empathy. You do not need to explain your kindness. You do not need to justify your detachment. You simply embody it. Repeat once more,
I care without losing myself. This is the ultimate lesson of detachment. You can live fully, engage deeply, and still remain unshakable. Takeaway: detachment is not coldness. Kindness is not weakness. When you care without losing yourself, you achieve emotional freedom, strength, and influence simultaneously.
Chapter 15. Live from choice, not compulsion. Here is the culmination of everything you've learned. Detachment is not just a skill, it is a way of life. When you master detachment, you gain something most people never experience: freedom of choice. You are no longer driven by other people's opinions, expectations, or chaos. You are no longer hijacked by old wounds, fleeting emotions, or the pressure to prove yourself. You are no longer a passenger in your own life. You decide. You choose where your energy goes. You choose where your attention goes. You choose how to respond. Every interaction becomes intentional. Every decision becomes empowered. Every day becomes guided by principle, not reaction. Repeat slowly, deliberately. I choose, not react. Say it again. Feel the weight of those words. They are a declaration of sovereignty. Most people live from compulsion. They respond because of habit. They act because of fear. They react because someone else pressed a button. Detachment breaks that cycle. It replaces automatic reactions with conscious choices. It replaces anxiety with clarity. It replaces chaos with calm. This is emotional adulthood. Not acting out of emotion, not seeking approval, not chasing understanding. It is choosing how to live regardless of circumstance. When you live from choice, you reclaim with time. You reclaim your energy. You reclaim your power. You no longer get swept into unnecessary conflicts. You no longer allow old patterns to dictate your behavior. You no longer give away your calm for temporary validation. Choice is a muscle. The more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. The more you practice pausing before reacting, the more your mind becomes your ally, not your enemy. Notice the difference. When you react, energy leaves you. When you choose, energy stays. When you react, you are carried by circumstance. When you choose, circumstance bends around your will. Detachment is the vehicle. Choice is the destination. Say it one more time. I choose, not react. This chapter is not the end. It is the beginning of living intentionally. The culmination of all the skills you've built. Accepting responsibility for yourself. Stopping the need for validation. Understanding projections. Controlling responses, not outcomes. Releasing attachment to opinions. Freeing your identity from others. Letting go of misunderstanding. Observing emotions. Removing yourself from chaos. Building internal standards. Releasing the past. Mastering solitude. Becoming unreactable. Detaching with kindness. All of these steps converge into one truth. Your life is your choice. Nothing outside you has the authority to dictate your peace. Nothing outside you can force your action. Your energy is yours. Your mind is yours. Your emotions are yours. Use them wisely. Guard them fiercely. Direct them intentionally. This is emotional freedom. This is inner authority. This is the life of a fully detached, fully empowered individual. Final takeaway. Detachment creates freedom. Choice creates power. When you live from choice, not compulsion, you step fully into emotional adulthood. You are calm in chaos. You are unshakable in conflict. You are sovereign in your mind, body, and spirit. The world may try to provoke you,
People may try to control you, circumstances may push you, but you will respond from authority, not reaction, not fear, not need. You choose. You are free.